I hope you're having a wonderful day. I'm glad to be here today. If you have a chance and you can grab 2 half sheets of white cardstock or large white blank index cards, you'll be able to use them before we log out today to make some manipulatives that you can use in class next week. You also will need a green marker, a yellow marker, a red marker, a black marker, blue marker, and then if you have like a small plastic box with a lid, like I just use a Tupperware container or Rubbermaid container, and then something like sand, sugar, salt, sprinkles, something you can use to put in your box that you're going to get to see me writing in as a hands-on approach to teaching letters and sounds. And if you don't have those things, no worries. There's going to be directions, and in the presentation it tells you how to go back, and you can make your manipulatives if you don't have those things handy. So today, my goal for you is that you will leave with at least one multisensory strategy that you can implement into your online classroom next week, and you'll be able to make manipulatives that you can use and your students can use in future Class Connect sessions. So as Casey mentioned, I'm a lead kindergarten teacher for Ohio Virtual Academy. I have been teaching with OHVA for 10 years, and this is my 6th year teaching kindergarten. I have my master's degree in reading, and I'm a master teacher in the state of Ohio. And prior to teaching in the online learning environment, I taught for 10 years in the traditional brick and mortar school and in a supplemental education setting. So I love learning, as I'm sure you do too. That's why you're teachers. Most recently, I have been attending professional development sessions to increase my knowledge and perfect my practice in multisensory education, self and peer reflection, and differentiation. And the reason I kind of sought out these things to grow professionally was our at-risk population at OHVA has increased since I first started working there 10 years ago. Our students need information presented to them in a variety of ways in order to master the basic concepts needed to succeed in school and in life. And so the kids overall are increasing in what they need. My classroom has been no different, so I need to adapt my teaching to meet their varied learning styles. And by using a multisensory approach, that's one way that I can do this. So we use AimsWeb on mine, kind of like Dibble's assessment, where we look at letter identification, letter sounds, nonsense words throughout the year to kind of see where our kids are at. This fall, 37% of our students did not meet our fall target of identifying 13 or more letters in 1 minute. 35% of them did not meet the winter target that we just did in January of identifying 38 or more letters in 1 minute. And then also in the winter we add letter sounds and then we add nonsense words. So 32% of our students didn't meet the target in letter sounds and 35% did not meet the winter target of nonsense words. That's over a third of our kindergartners. So we have to do something to make a difference for these kids and to reach out to them, because what we have been doing traditionally and what maybe our parents know to do, just like in the opening session, how we was talking about, how we need to change our strategies with working with our students now. We have to change, because what the parents know to do, obviously, it's not working. We have less kids coming in that have been to preschool. They haven't had a formal education, and they're coming to us very needy, and they're coming to us needing a variety of ways to learn what they need to learn. So I kind of looked at my own class, and it follows the same trend as the school. 32% of my kids came in not knowing 13 or more letters in the fall. Again, 32% did not make it to that 38 or more letters in 1 minute. 32% of my kids did not know 20 or more letter sounds in January, and 29% of my kids did not know 19 or more letter sounds and nonsense words in January. So I know I'm heading in the right direction. I actually went to this training. It was Orton Gillingham training only in October. So what you're going to see today are with my kids that I started towards the end of October. They've really only had October, November, a little bit of December because of winter break. And then they had January. And by then I was preparing the presentation. So they haven't had much exposure to this, but I know we're making gains and we will continue to make gains as we continue through the rest of this year and into next year. So let's take just a minute, take a little poll. Do you have any experience teaching by utilizing a multisensory approach? A, I'm comfortable presenting information in a variety of ways, auditory, visual, kinesthetic, in the online classroom. B, I have used multisensory strategies in the brick and mortar classroom. C, I am using some multisensory strategies to teach my online students, but I want to know more ways to engage my students in the virtual classroom. Or D, I want to learn how to engage my students in the online classroom by utilizing a multisensory approach. So take just a minute here. Your polling tools should be right up where the raise hand button is. You can click on those. And it looks like we have a pretty varied response. So if we take a look, I just grabbed it kind of quickly here. We have about 4% that are very comfortable utilizing multisensory strategies in their classroom, and that will be great because there'll be a chance for you to share with others before you log out today. About 21% that have used some in the brick and mortar classroom, 34% that are using already some strategies and they want to know more, and about 23% that this will be brand new, and I'm hoping you will take away more than just one strategy you can use with your students next week. So like I said, I went to this training and I've adapted it for the online environment, and it was probably the best training I have gone to ever. And that's even saying that I have my master's degree in reading. Like, it just put everything into perspective. And so basically, this approach was developed by a neurologist, Dr. Samuel T. Orton, and an educator and psychologist, Anna Gillingham. And they just developed this approach to reading. It works very well with students with dyslexia or have some of those dyslexic tendencies, moving things around, reversing things, putting things out of order. The theory combines multisensory techniques along with the structure of the English language. It incorporates the 3 learning pathways, auditory, kinesthetic, and visual. And it can impact all children. It allows the educator to capitalize on an individual student's dominant learning modality while delivering instruction that will strengthen the remaining learning pathways. I went to this. It's a week-long training. I know they have them all over the country, so there is a website there. You'll be able to click on the live link from the PowerPoint when you download the slides to see if there's one in your area. It was a week long, like 8 to 4, Monday through Friday. Prior to going to this training, some of the other teachers in my building, the K2 teachers, had been going and they had been sharing like bits and pieces. And I liked what I saw, but until I went and I was immersed in the training, it just didn't like all click. But that week I got so many ideas and I immediately came back and implemented some of them that following Monday, following training. And they have, what I attended was the comprehensive training. They have an advanced training that I'm hoping to do next school year to even just go back and further my exposure. So a lot of this is about teaching students to read. However, if you're in maybe 3rd through 5th grade and you're attending this session, you can utilize these strategies with just struggling readers. So it may not be that you would implement this with your entire classroom like a kindergarten teacher would, but I was actually attending the training with a 3rd grade teacher, and she was like, oh my gosh, I can use this with so-and-so. So she had a particular student in mind that was struggling in her classroom, and she wasn't necessarily trained because she had been working mostly with upper grades. She didn't feel as comfortable working with the little one, teaching those very basics. And so after attending the training and implementing some of these strategies, she was able to fill in the gaps for that student. Now, when you first logged in, and I'm afraid because I know there were some tech issues in the very first session, so I don't want to do a web tour, and each of these I have little snippets from my classroom. They're not staged. These are just random selections that I went in. I'm like, oh, we worked on letters that day. So I want to let you see it firsthand, what it looks like in an online classroom. Each little snippet's 5 minutes. We're not going to have 5 minutes or we won't have time to create some of our resources today, but you can go back if you're interested and watch the entire section. I'm going to ask, I'll put the link in the chat box, but it's also on that Word document that I file transferred out at the beginning of the session. When you logged in, it should have popped up and asked if you wanted to save it. You can just follow along and click on that, and I'll set our timer for like 2 minutes. When the timer goes off, I just ask that you stop the recording and come back, and I'll give you a little introduction on the next piece. But this, I implemented my students, it was in October, and so it was all about teaching letters. And the Orton-Gillingham strategy is to actually manipulate. So like if you have the letter B, you would actually glue buttons to a letter B. And you'll notice that all of these letters, they're all lowercase. And I asked about that because that's all we practiced all week were lowercase letters. And I'm like, well, when do you do the uppercase letters? And the rationale is you're going to see the lowercase letters more frequently, so they emphasize the lowercase letters. And then the uppercase letters you can teach in conjunction, but you just don't spend as much time teaching the uppercase letters. And so it just kind of all made sense. Okay, so what I want you to do, this first activity is my students back in October, that first week I got back from training, actually implementing this letter I activity. I'll put the link in the chat box. You can go ahead and click on that or click on it from your file transfer, and I'll set our timer for 2 minutes, and then you can stop the recording and come back. Welcome back, everyone. If you can just pause that recording, you can go back if you were intrigued by that and watch a little more. Someone noticed it is a super small group of 5 students. These are part of my 30% that did not identify those 13 letters in 1 minute. And we also have another teacher, another reading teacher that works with some of them that are super low. So she even had some of my students. But these classes are every single day, and this is one thing that we implemented to really help them get the formation of the letters, get the sound. You're really teaching the letters and the sounds, which K-12 does anyway with their Language Arts Blue curriculum. So that was our letter I activity. It goes up through the blends. They have a certain order that they recommend if you go to the training. Like they start with the letter C, and then they move to an O because you know a C, and then it turns into an O if you continue your circle around. And then you can go up and make your letter A, and then a D builds on a letter A. It goes a little bit taller, and then you start doing the ones that drop below the line, as you'll see in our next activity, which is on our house paper. So our next little snippet is using what they call house paper, where you work with the students so they see, like here's the roof of your house, here's the main part of your house that you typically write your lowercase letters in, and then down here is your basement. So some letters are going to dip down into the basement. Okay, so let's take a look at this. I like that idea of putting 2 kids together for partner work. Now that they know how to make those letters and everything, that would be a great idea and a great way to encourage them to work together because they do like to talk to each other. So let's take a look at the house paper exercise. Again, I'll set our timer for 2 minutes. The link's coming here in the chat box, or you can grab it off of that Word document, and we'll come back and talk about this one in a minute. Okay, for this activity, we were writing on the board. I think it's important for the students to see that it's not easy to write with a mouse, especially if you have left-handed students. Okay, so they need to see that I make mistakes too. I'm not so much looking for this to be perfect. What I'm looking for is that they are forming their letters correctly. And I have learned so much about their writing since I have simplified it. And I take the time to show them how to form it. It also gives me the chance to show them that, you know, letters can be written different ways. Like when we first started with AimsWeb and they had to learn that the letter A was written like this instead of like this. And we had to teach them that they needed to recognize an A both ways. So in the example that you saw the Q. Q can be written different way depending on the font. So it gives you a chance to have that conversation. By having the students use their paper and giving them the option to write inside or outside the house, that's differentiation. That's giving kids a choice into how they do their activity. And then at the end, by asking them to circle the one that is their very best work, and I do the same thing because sometimes mine don't look very good either, they're having a chance to self-reflect and see how they're doing. I've added it one step further, and now when we go back, the kids go through, and if you watch this one all the way through, I believe you will see it. I actually let the kids, when we share their slide, they get to circle the one they feel is the best. And so there's your peer feedback. So they can say, you know what, you think this one's your best, but I think this one's your best. And so they get a chance to actually circle it. And so that's one way you can kind of incorporate a lot of different strategies and really have them think about their work that maybe you hadn't thought of before. Someone asked in the chat box, how do I feel about writing on the board versus authentic writing? Both are important, in my opinion. By having them write on the paper, I get to see them. But you will see in our red word activity, which is coming up, they have to do authentic writing and they have to actually write on paper. So you'll get to see where I have incorporated that into the plan as well. So now the next piece I want you to see, there's 2 parts to this one because I wanted you to see how far my students have grown from October to January, and then I'm going to tell you what they're doing now. One of their parts of what they call the 3-part drill is letter name and sound review, where you bring the letters up and you say the name of the letters like O. O says ah. And then the kids repeat after you. So I want you to see what they were able to do in October, that first week I got back from training, and then how I started giving them more ownership of the activities in January. So the first one I want you to watch is going to be the one I put into the chat box now. It's the one labeled October. I'll set our timer for 2 minutes, and then I'll just quickly advance to the next one in January, and then we'll talk about it. So here are my students doing their letter name and sound review in October, that first week back from my training. Okay, so that was me that first week back. The kids were so excited if they had their actual own box for them to use. So now we're going to take a look at what they did in November or January. And I'll put the link up on the board as well. says my content is currently unavailable. Hold on. I know one problem I ran into is because I was using the free screencasting service, and so I had too many people clicking on it, and so I ran into a little bit of a problem there. So that might be what's wrong with this one. And so let me just share with you what they are doing now in January. Somebody noticed the webcam. I actually have, it's a document camera, and so it actually points down, but not all of the teachers that I work with have one, so they found ways to use their webcam that's built into their computer or external camera. Okay, I'll just briefly show you when they get to this one. And so there, you just have to change the view of your camera. So I'm using the document one a lot. We'll see if there's too much of a delay with this. But my box has changed a lot, and so now when my kids do this activity, they're actually moving the letters up, they're telling the sounds, and then their friends are repeating the sounds. And so, and you'll notice my box has gotten bigger, so we have to write words now. We're actually writing 3-letter words. And we found colored sand. You can buy it through the Orton Gillingham website, but one of our teachers found that you could buy colored sand if you have a Dollar Tree, and it's near where they have their plants, like their vases and their fake flowers and rocks. If you go into there, you can get a bag of sand for $1. It doesn't take colored sand. It doesn't take much. It looks like this. Okay, so I now have blue sand, green sand, black sand, white sand, red sand, blue sand, and it's just the two colors make it more fun. So when you're writing in it, you kind of see both colors. And so that's something you can check out. I'm sorry the video is not playing right this minute, but it should later. Like I said, it's because I was using the free site for screencasting. It told me I had maxed it out there for a little bit. So that might be why the one in January is not working. But I am so proud of my kids now because they will sit there, they'll bring them up, they're even making words on their own. The camera is a Deso. And I originally got it because I thought it would be good, like when you're reading stories, you have the books at your house, you don't have to scan them. And so it's a Deso visual scan is how it comes up when I have to grab it from my webcam. But my teachers that I work with, they're doing all of this with, like I said, external webcams, or they're tilting their laptops down so that they can use their box. If you go to the training, you actually get cards right here that have the letters on them. Okay, our next one, this one should work, is an auditory review. It's when they actually get to write the letters. You just bring it up. It's just like a regular webcam. When you click on video, you just click on video, and then it gives you the option to choose instead of your internal camera. It plugs in through the USB. Okay, so that's one way you can get it. Okay, so our next one, and hopefully the rest of these will play and we haven't overloaded their server. If not, I can talk through them and you can go back and view them later. The next one is how I told you that I am so super excited that I actually get to see my kids write, and I can really help them with their letter formation more than I have ever been able to help them before. So here's the link for the auditory review. Go ahead and take a look at that one for about 2 minutes. Okay, it's looking like we may have overloaded the server, so let me talk through this one. Someone asked about the specific camera One person in the room has this one. Let me share with you. It's an Epivo document camera. What you can do is go on to Amazon and you can type in mine. It's just an Adesso visual cam. I actually told my husband I wanted it one year for Mother's Day. And I used it for stories, but once I started this, I was like, I use it every day. I go back and forth between this camera and my regular webcam because kindergartners absolutely love to see your face on the camera, so I go back and forth. With this particular activity, it is like with the sandbox, and I use my sandbox, and I will say, "Ba." You know, B says "ba," and then the kids have to write the B on the board. And we go through and we do it a couple times a week, and they go through and they actually form the letters. So while I'm watching them do this, I can watch, you know, if they go down and then they form a D. Or, you know, sometimes they like to make the N and they'll just go like this. And I'll be like, okay, but let's start at the top, go down, go back up and over, and I'll have them redo it. So I'm actually watching them do the letter formation as they go. So I'm able to stop, make corrections. I don't know if you know this little trick. This is one that I actually just learned from another teacher, was you can drag your own name from the participant box onto the whiteboard. Try it. I know it'll make a mess on the whiteboard, but that's okay. Try to drag your name from the participant box because I've trained my kindergartners now to do this. And it's awesome. So they can grab their name and drop it right onto the board. So try that and see. Because now I used to go through and write their names, and then I would have to stick them down to the whiteboard. Oh, you might not try it with you might have to have your tools. There you go. See, isn't that cool? And so I have trained my kindergartners to actually go through and put their own names on the board. And so that saves me even another step. And so what they do is they come through, they put their name on their board. They are always allowed to write in their own sandbox, or they can write on the board. Some of them have a sandbox, and they are okay with using their sandbox. Some have a sandbox, but they still want to write on the board. So again, that's the differentiation. They're allowed to go through and actually pick, do I want to write in my sandbox today, or do I want to write on the board? But watching your students actually form those letters on the board is priceless. We've learned so much with that activity. And then next, we'll see if the blending board will work. If it does, give me a smiley face. If it doesn't, I'll talk through this one as well. But let's go ahead and try to watch the blending board from January. Still blank. Okay. Okay. Unfortunately, it looks like we have maxed out my screencasting server. So what I would encourage you to do, though, is to go back, and you can always watch these later. But with the blending board, basically, we're taking what the kids have started out doing with the individual sounds, like when we're just bringing one letter up at a time, and we're having the students, you know, say B says ba, E says eh, and you'll notice at this point we are doing all of our short vowel sounds. We are not doing long vowels. Those will get introduced later. Of course, if you teach a higher grade, you're going to introduce those long vowel sounds too, and they have something called vowel intensives where you do like vowel temps and everything. But with this, they're now starting to put those individual sounds together. So the way this would work, and I started in October with just putting the letters up for them. Pulled one from this box, and this box. And of course, we don't put anything up that the students have not been introduced to. So at the beginning, they're only going to be using those very first letters, the C, the O, the A, the D, the G when they first start out. Now my kids are modeling and doing it for the class, and every day the kids get to pick 2 words to do in front of the class. When we find a real word, we say, give us a thumbs up, or we talk about it being a real word. Okay, so we go ga-I-ka, gick. And so it's where they have to, pronounce each sound individually, and then they have to put it all together. And all we're doing is we're dragging cards up right from the bottom, and then when we're done with them, we move them to the side. And so this is all from the Orton Gillingham training, but I have adapted it a lot to work in the online environment. Okay, but now my kids do it. They'll pull it up and they go, ga-I-ka, gick. And they get so excited. This one may have been the day I had one little boy. He's like, Daddy, I did it. I did it. And so they were so excited that I actually let them be the teacher. And so now it's very student-led. I just put it up there and I'm okay, Art, you're first. Julie, you're next. And they just go through and they know the routine to practice blending. Now, when I talk to you about the writing authentically, we do that with red words, which are just our sight words. You can call them anything you want. Orton Gillingham calls them red words because they're words that you can't really sound out. They actually start teaching kindergartens in the very first week of school, red words or sight words. So every week we add words to basically our toolbox of words that we know. This happened to be number 28, and it was there. And I learned from my kids how to differentiate and what their needs really were. So I introduced the word. I have it written on paper, something like this, okay? And what I have the students do is they have red word paper that they actually write their word. And I send this paper out, but they don't have to use this paper. I always say just get any sheet of paper, but you must be writing. And so in your packet of things from me, you actually have this paper that if you want to use it, you can. And so we number them every day. I have a clipboard with all the words that we've done. We are up to number 33. And when they write it the first time to get that multi-sensory, hands-on, kinesthetic approach, I put this underneath and I tell them they can, but it's just one of those like plastic screens. And that's why there's a picture of it on the screen. So they lay their paper and we actually write the word on the paper with a red crayon. But I tell them if you don't have a red crayon, you can use a blue crayon. You can use a pencil. It does not matter to me. So if this was the word there, I would say, okay, we're on number 28. And that way we're teaching numbers too. What's a 28 look like? Let's write there, and we talk about only using our little letters. And it makes it bumpy. And this is why we want it to be bumpy, is because after they have written it, I have them give me a green check, and you can see that in the recording later. We trace it, and we say T-H-E-I-R. You do that 3 times, and then you say, okay, if you have a screen, put it underneath your screen. And now we're going to trace it. So it's that kinesthetic feeling, the texture. They can do it with sandpaper. You can also do it with, like, they suggested like a big Ziploc bag and like hair gel in a bag that's all zipped up because it gives you that texture. It's just, you can do it in your sandbox, which is why we're writing words in our sandbox now. But we would trace it again 3 times, T-H-E-I-R. And then you underline it because that's kind of as you put it all together, you know you're writing it on the line. And after that, we tap it out. When we tap it out, you put your arm out, the one that you're not writing with. So if you're right-handed, you put your left arm out, and you tap it 1 time for every letter. So you would go T-H-E-I-R, there. And you do that 3 times. You're crossing the midline, so it really helps those students, if they're struggling, some of them, that's the connection they need because you're physically getting them involved in the process and you're crossing the midline. So after we arm tap it, I have them write it on the board. Everybody chooses their own box. Again, I get to see the letter formation. And I write it once and they get to write it I mean, these are kindergartners writing. I learned, though, that when we were doing tracing, notice I have like a bunch of rainbow writing up here. Well, one day I left my tools open. And the next thing I know, when I'm tracing with my finger, my kids are tracing with a different color on the board. I was okay with that, but that was just, I happened to fall into differentiation there, and I made it moving forward. The kids were allowed to write on the board when they were doing their tracing activity, as long as they were using their tools appropriately. So they can't scribble, but if they're tracing, when we're tracing with our finger, they're allowed to trace with a different color on the board. So that was a really cool find that I found. And then after that, they have to write it on paper again 3 times. And when you get into the older grades, like 1st, 2nd, 3rd, even up through 5th, that's when they need to write a sentence with that word. And then you can emphasize capital letters, punctuation marks, how to use that particular word in a sentence. Okay, so that's an extension you can do. I have not done that yet with my kindergartners. And then next, along with the blending board, and this is why you needed the note cards or the pieces of white cardstock, there are 2 different visuals you can use to teach your kids to blend. One thing you can use is your hand, okay, and with your hand, this is why you need the colors. Again, you use the hand that you are not writing with, because you're going to tap it out by syllable. And you can do everything with like 3 syllables. So cat, if we were trying to spell cat, we would go ka-at, cat. Ka-at, cat. And they can start sounding things out. It helps them when they're reading, and it helps them when they're writing. And I have found both to be very helpful in class when we're trying to sound out like CVC words. With the older grades, break it into syllables, and you will find that you can break things into a 3-sound pattern for most words. The other visual that you can use that I like a little more than the hand is the arrow, which you see up here on the board. I use the arrow all the time, and so the kids know that when the arrow comes out, we are going to blend. And I can put this little visual like in storybooks on my slides, and if they're having trouble figuring out the word, they can take it 1 sound at a time, like this. They will drag the letters down now and put an F, an A, and an N, and then they'll show their classmates how you can do fa, a, n, and bath. Notice the TH makes 1 sound. It's a digraph, so it only gets 1 colored circle, the red one. Ba, a, sa, bath. Or da, a, g, dog. And so I love using the arrow, and I tell them the reason we practiced our sounds in isolation was because we needed to learn them in isolation so we can put them together. And this is the reason that we're learning what we're learning. It really helps us see how everything comes together. Like, why did we practice writing our letters? Why did we practice the C, then the O, and the A? Because they build on each other. Why do we practice just our sounds in isolation? Why do we practice on the blending board? Now, why do we use the arrow? It's all helping us with both our reading and our writing, and we can use those strategies throughout our instruction. And so somebody asked if my kindergarten classes are required. At Ohio Virtual Academy, they are required for students that are not on target. Does that mean we have 100% participation every day? No, things come up, and that's the reason the students have chosen this model. But I will tell you, out of all my students that are low, they do come. You saw the one day there was only 4, another day there might be 7. I make it required for all my low ones, but then I also tell all my other families that if they would like to come to class, I'm happy to put it on their plan. So sometimes I have students that just want a little extra help with sight words, or they just really enjoy coming to class, and so they'll join us too for class. So my small group usually ranges, some days I might have 2. I had 2 yesterday. Another day I might have, 6 or 7, but it's still manageable to do a lot of hands-on, and everybody gets multiple turns throughout the session. So what have I noticed since implementing these strategies? I am more excited about teaching than ever. I absolutely look forward to my 11 o'clock sessions with my students. My kids are excited. They get so excited with their sandboxes. I got a salt box. I just got this one. I hear the learning coaches in the background repeating the same things I've said, so I know I'm modeling for them and they're modeling for their students. I'm teaching them strategies they can use that maybe they didn't grow up learning that way, but they're learning how to adapt for their students that need this instruction in a variety of ways. I know when my kids are making letters incorrectly, I can help them make immediate corrections. As a result, their handwriting has improved significantly since the beginning of the school year. Using this multisensory approach has really made it easier for me to differentiate, have my kids self-reflect and offer peer feedback to their peers. And I'm able to explain to students and families why we do certain activities and how one activity lends itself to future sessions. So then I thought, well, what are my families saying about this? Well, this is what my kids are saying. Occasionally, Sophia likes to use her sandbox. She does do the finger tapping and the arm tapping too. Now, my favorite one is this one. Oh no, my favorite one's the next one. This one I never thought about until the mom gave me this feedback. So you do have to mention to be careful with your sandbox because they had a personal sandbox. Ayla loved it. It was fun. It was economical, environmentally friendly, especially considering how many things we routinely print out. She still has a bigger box to practice sight words, but we had to take the little one away from the computer because sand and computers don't mix. Even though she tried to be careful, her writing hand is the same as her mouse hand, and enough tiny grains of sand were inadvertently transferred from her fingertip, and so the mouse wheel quit working. So word to the wise, if you encourage your kids to get a sandbox, tell them to watch and not transfer it. Never thought of that until I asked for my feedback. Now, here's my favorite. We use the sandbox. I have a love-hate relationship with it because it's like a beach in her room. But I agree it's working. I can always vacuum. It's a difference in her that I care about. We've always written our sight words, our vocabulary, and phonics too. As for the words you work on during class, she uses loose leaf paper to write the lesson of the day. I wish she put it in a notebook so she can refer back because the papers get recycled or misplaced too. The arm tapping has become desk thumping some days, but that works also. Ruby loves the sandbox. She even tells me what color yours is. She tells me we have to add more sand soon. I know it's working as I spell out words like cat, dog, can, she, he, and she tells me what it is correctly. And so my kids are liking their sandbox. But like I said, there's other alternatives. You don't have to use the actual sand. You can use other alternatives. Okay, so now it's time to move to our breakout rooms. I'll just quickly go over. There's going to be 4 breakout rooms. If you've not downloaded the resources, you can do that, and I'll come by and put the actual link right on the slide. If you want to load any slides into your own breakout room while you're in the session, just raise your hand, and we'll make you a moderator in your own personal breakout room if you want to try to see how you could incorporate any of these visuals. Otherwise, they're there for you to explore later with the rest of the videos too. I apologize for that, but trying to do this the most economical way, we kind of overloaded the server. And if you have any questions moving forward, come back to the main room or send me an email. You can always reach out to me. I'm happy to do that. And then in breakout room 2, this just walks you through how you can make your own blending arrow, blending hand, or personal sandbox if you would like to do that, so you're ready for next week. And then in breakout room 3, if you would take a moment just to share at least one thing that you have taken away from today's session, or if you want to use the microphone, you'll be free to do that as well with your other colleagues that are in there. And then in breakout room 4, please leave comments for me below. How did today's session go? What suggestions do you have for me to keep in mind for any future sessions that I might be asked to do? And then thank you very much for taking time out of your busy day to attend my session. Take some time to move yourself among the 4 breakout room activities, which I got to get loaded for you. Sorry about that. Give me just a minute. And then if you have any questions, you can feel to reach out to me via phone or email. All my information is on this slide right here. I'll turn it off of follow so that while I'm making the breakout rooms, you can go back and forth if you would like to. And I'll have the rooms ready in just a quick minute.
All right, while Susan is setting up those breakout rooms, let's just give her a round of applause or a thumbs up. I don't know about you guys, but I have never felt so inspired to do some of these multi-sensory activities that she shared with us today. This was absolutely incredible. I'm excited to move throughout those breakout rooms, as I'm sure all of you are. So we'll give her just a moment to set that up. I also wanted to mention, please do not sign out of this room without filling out the survey. So we do have that survey that's separate from her asking for feedback in those breakout rooms. And it will show here in the main room. So when you are ready to exit this session, just please make sure you grab that and fill that out. And then we had a question, do you have to stay in this room? Absolutely not. You are free to go to any of the sessions and promising practices that you're interested in when the next main session starts. So look at your schedule, figure out where you want to be next if you get to do another session, and plan on moving to that room when you're done with the breakout rooms here. Again, we thank you all for being here. What a great session that she presented.
Okay, the breakout room slides are ready, so you can feel free to move yourself. There's nothing additional to share, so once you're happy, you are free to leave. Thank you very much for joining me today, and if you have any questions, all my contact information is in the PowerPoint. Feel free to give me send me an email or give me a call, and I'll put the Dropbox link in the chat as well. Thank you.